This next presentation is on a communication project that is called the Johari Window. And actually it's an engineer's model of identifying how energy works and is displaced. It's kind of interesting because there was a psychologist who had seen this model and he said, you know, this works. This would work very well in understanding communication problems that alcoholics and addicts have, and what recovery does to help to build communication skills in a person's life. So what I want to show you is Vern Johnson's interpretation of this. And the first thing that we see in this is a window, a communication window. And in this first window here, upper left-hand corner, is what we call the open window of communication. And in this particular window, the open window of communication, this is information that is open flow of this information that you can see clearly that I'm doing and that I'm presenting and that you can see of me clearly, okay? Free flow of information. Now, this next window, and that particular window may be in the form of understanding, like similar to someone on stage where that information is very clear and defined. So this next window is what we call the hidden window of information. And the hidden window of information is information that I can't see, but you can see about my behavior. And that may be in subtle, subtle clues of information that I'm not clear on. I may have had a bad day. I may be frustrated, angry, and sensitive about problems that are going on. And I seem to be thin-skinned. I seem to be overreacting to situations. I'm not that clear as far as my behavior is concerned, but you may be able to point that out and say, gee, you seem kind of angry. But in my interpretation, I'd say, well, I'm not angry. I'm just frustrated, which means the same thing. Okay. So there may be mannerisms or data that I'm giving you through my behavior that you're able to pick up on that I can't see. All right. Another way of seeing this is kind of like in a mirror. You see in a regular mirror that you see in the bathroom, you can see your reflection that you see every morning. You get up and look in the mirror, right? But when you go to a dressing room, you get these series of mirrors. You're able to see a different perspective of you that you hadn't seen before. And what happens in a group situation is that other people can tell you information that you may not be aware of. Okay? And the old saying that I say here is that if one person tells you got a tail, don't worry about it. But if 3 people tell you got a tail, you better turn around and see if it's wagging. And that's a fact of data that is collected by a group of people that can share with you. Okay? So I can maybe trust a bit of that information that they're sharing with me. And there may be a reason for why I am not hearing that about my behavior. I think it's a natural social courtesy that we don't just divulge information that we see about somebody. You know, they may have body odor or bad breath, we kind of dodge it or whatever it might be. But to a certain amount of emphasis is that if a person is shut off, shut down, and quiet and removed, that might be a subtle indicator that they don't want to hear this information about their behavior, right? So a way for a person to access this information that the group has to let them become teachable is to open that up and say things like, okay, I'm open for feedback. What do you see about my behavior that would indicate a problem there? Give me feedback or ask questions to people is another way of opening that doorway of receiving information that they may be aware of. Okay? Now, this next window is what we call the secret window. And this is information that I'm aware of, but I'm not really willing to disclose to the group. Okay? There's a number of reasons why I would withhold this information. One particularly is that, if I shared with you that I was going, seeing some friends down at a bar, they might confront me because there's a rule that there's something I sign that says I wouldn't go to bar situation. So I'm not going to disclose that when it comes to somebody asking for, how my week has been. I'm not going to disclose that because it could put me at risk as far as further consequences to my behavior, right? That would be one reason. Another one might be because my sensitivity issues of how I feel about myself, fear of abandonment, fear of sharing certain bits of information about my past. It might have been about sexual abuse. And that if I shared that with the group, they'd see a different perspective of me, a different view of me, and may reject me. So maybe fear of abandonment or fear of rejection, I might not respond in giving and divulging information about myself. Now, I found that this part is extremely important for a person's success in making lifestyle change. Becoming teachable is part of that process, but the person may just learn that at an intellectual level, that teachability. But the other side of that about disclosing about themselves with a group is involving trust. And that's more of a deeper connection in the relationship with other people. So by reaching into the point of being willing to disclose this information about yourself to other people, that makes you invested in that group process, invested in what they're sharing with you could occur, the possibility of change occur. So along the way, by disclosing a piece of that information, that becomes part of my open window of communication. By hearing what feedback that other people say about my behavior becomes part of my window of communication, and that becomes larger. Now, if I selectively trust a certain part of that process and refrain from the other, there's certain other things that start to happen. One is that this little football huddle we were showing before, if a person is receiving information from other people and they're in this teachable place in their life, sooner or later that group is going to start to feel drained, aren't they? Because all the energy is going into this person, nothing's coming out. Okay? So at some point in time, there is usually a suspicion, and people start making assumptions, and may confront that person and say, I notice that you don't disclose anything about yourself. Do you think you're better than us? Do you think, and the pressure will come about on this person to start taking this risk of sharing about themselves. Otherwise, they will end up leaving the group. Okay, simple as that. The pressure from the group will say, you need to abide by the set of expectations of disclosure, otherwise you can't be involved with this. All right, you need to share by yourself. So that you usually get the person into a place of disclosing about themselves, opening up the doorway for this interaction. Now, another side of that is where the person is telling other people about their feelings, but they're not open to receiving feedback from other people. Okay? That becomes kind of an aggressive tendency, doesn't it? And what will happen in the group is the group will start to feel affected by that person's behavior because nobody else is able to share. And what is happening also through maybe intimidation is people may be fearful of disclosing to this person, that they need to shut up and listen for a change or listen to their feedback. That it solely isn't up to that person to be in control of that group, right? So what happens is that there may be a group member or the facilitator will take responsibility in confronting that person's behavior and giving them feedback and suggest other people give that person feedback, which can bring the person in line or they will leave the group. It's not a hot and cold situation, but the choice is to lead the person to making changes, modifying the behavior, or they will distance themselves further and further from that group in a natural way, or by the set of standards set by that group. Make sense? Okay, I'll give you an example. I was working at a program for heroin addicts coming, it's interesting, for ex-cons coming out of prison, specifically for heroin addiction. And I just started working this program, and I noticed this little old lady, she was a grandma kind of gal in there, and she didn't fit in, okay? And I asked the director, why is she here? And he said, well, because her family, she was a chronic late-stage alcoholic, her family disowned her because of her drinking. She had nowhere else to go. I said, well, she's not functioning in the group setting. She's taking care of everybody else. She's everybody's grandma or mom. Okay? She was taking care of everybody else, right? So I brought her, he said, well, confront her. I brought her chart into the group. I said, why are you here? I said, what's your purpose of being here? Well, I'm here to really help all these people because, you know, God's just given me this opportunity to be able to share with this group of people. I really love them and care about them. I said, fine. What it says here is that you're a chronic alcoholic, late stages, and your family disowned you because you drank. And I didn't try to disgrace her with this information. I was giving her the facts. And I said, so when are you going to start working on your problem rather than looking at theirs? She looked at me as a little sweet old lady. Who the hell made you God? And she started tearing me up. Well, you see, this is like a wolf in sheep's clothing kind of deal. And everybody else kind of caught on, well, this woman is using this as a defense to not look at herself. And they started giving her feedback, and she adjusted gradually to facing her responsibility, what she needed to do to become part of that group process rather than taking over. Make sense? All right. Now, as a result of doing these two things, of disclosure and of listening to what is occurring with your relationships with other people, you're interacting, right? And by interacting, you're able to gain a higher sense of resources than you would independently, and a greater sense of resources if you were only following this group rather than being part of it, right? So you basically changed your power resource in your life from 110 power to 220. Okay? And by doing that, you're able to reach into this fourth window, which we call unknown, or unknown potential. And this is a window that you don't know anything about. This is a window of something that the group knows something about, and neither do you. It's so, it could be in the sense of early childhood memories, untapped resources that you had never known you had the possibility of potential of having because you never took the risk to try. Okay? And what happens is you by interacting in this group, by using both of those resources, feedback, receiving feedback from other people, and giving back, contributing back to others, and sharing about yourself, you change that power to 220 rather than 110 and reach into this unknown and extract something out that you didn't know was ever there before. It's a real intriguing element to recover. David Mustang, or not David Mustang, I'm sorry, he was another guitarist. Stevie Ray Vaughan, jazz guitarist. And some of you have heard that name before. And he was a real incredible guitarist, and he made a video that they made a video of him of two different styles of music that he played. One, when he was using, which they don't know about, is after he got clean and sober, he just developed this whole new style of music, which they played in the second concert. The irony of that was that he ended up dying in a helicopter accident I believe it was Eric Clapton's ticket, who's now in recovery himself, that he gave him his ticket because he had to leave, and he crashed, sadly. But you see, he was in recovery. He was able to reach into this creativity and tap into a resource he never knew he had the availability for. Okay, and I've seen that often in people's lives where they have changed remarkably and went in a totally different direction. I'll give you another example. I was working, somebody you never heard about it. I was working, I won't mention his name, I was working with this artist, and he was a master at building miniature houses. And he built these houses 2.5 by 2.5 feet, 2.5 feet tall, and they sold for about $45,000 to $50,000 a piece. But it took him 9 months to build these houses, okay? And, along the process, what had occurred was that, you see, he had come into treatment as a result of consequence. His wife was hitting him over the head with a frying pan, not literally, but saying, you either get into treatment or I'm going to divorce you. He's in his mid-50s. And he came in, and one of the things I try to present to people is, what is it, something that you've never done, something that you always wanted to do, a different way of thinking, a different approach, if that's taking a different way to work, taking a different, way to, experience life in a different way. He said, is there anything you ever dreamed of doing that you never followed through? And he said, well, I used to be a hell of a painter. I said, well, you mean oil and acrylics? He said, yeah. And I let it go, quite frankly, because I found this way of becoming, building miniature houses that I was able to drink at night. And I just kind of let it go. And I often wondered what would happen to me if I pursued painting. But my motivation to paint left me my drinking, because I had that option, a way of creating this whole new world to drink. I said, well, next week, why don't you get a canvas, oils, acrylics, whatever you like, paint a picture and bring it in, and tell me how you feel about it. And he brought in a picture of a whiskey glass half full of milk. It's rustic design, oil acrylic. I'm not sure if it was acrylic or oil. And he had this big smile on his face saying, what do you think? And I'm not an art critic, okay? I said, it looks great to me. He continued to pursue this painting. He won 2 national championships of the best art of this style in the country. He's a freaking Picasso, okay? But you see, his drinking stopped him from being able to follow his true motivation and his true potential inside to be able to accomplish these tasks until later in life. Fortunately, he was able to reach back in and find this. Okay? And everybody has this unknown Picasso inside. It doesn't mean that you're a great artist. I can draw stick people. Okay? But in some way, your style of living can come out uniquely to your own creation. Something that is to your specification, something that the gift that you have to bring into the world can be shared. And part of that, it gets trapped in this unknown potential. Does that make sense? Now let's take a look at this in another light, okay? Let's look in the aspect of people who are in addictive thinking styles, or repeating the same cycles over and over again, have a very small open window of communication. Okay? They're shut off from the world around them. Okay? They're exploring the same things that they had explored for a long time. Their possibilities in their life are very limited. Everybody I know uses. Okay? It gets locked into that cycle. So they have very few opportunities available to them. But a person in recovery has a very large open window of communication, which means they have a lot more options and possibilities available to them than this person over here does, which increases the potential for new experiences in their life. See, that's the difference between addictive thinking and creative thinking. Addictive thinking tells me, something similar to what a friend of mine told me, who is in recovery. She's a psychologist. And she told me that she felt like she was on the tail of a comet. She didn't know where she was going to, but she knew she was going somewhere new. So I can look in that in the addictive thinking style out of fear of if I try something new, I might slam into a star or a planet, get vaporized. Or everything, if I try something new that I haven't tried before, everything that passes me is something I haven't experienced before. Okay? See what the possibilities are in your life and be able to live the full potential is what life should be, I hope, in our lives. Now, is this, we do this once and it's there? No, this is a process. I can't just openly disclose my life story to someone on a bus stop. They're going to run away screaming, right? So I have to find a group of people that I can trust, that I can develop that insight with, and be able to respond in a relationship with to disclose this information and be able to take the data that is present in my present day to be able to see what choices I have at this moment. Okay? It's not a process that I got once from a group of people and it filled my life. This is a process that we do on a daily basis to be able to fill our lives as life moves on around us. Okay. Any questions on this?
What was the artist's thought? Why was there milk in the whiskey glass?
I didn't really pursue that, other than, it was pretty self-evident that this was a new nurturing cycle for him.
True.
In taking this risk. But he has continued to remain an abstinent, and I've seen him over the past, I think it's been 7 years he's been doing so. He's continued with his art and his marriage. She's no longer hitting him over the head with a frying pan. And he continues his life in abundance. His paintings are worth $1,500. He's signing his name to any canvas. So he's set. Plus, the irony of that was that because he stopped making the miniature houses, it was like the death of an artist. His trainings became extremely valuable to train other people because he was no longer doing his art in that way. So it made out double in that process.
Maybe the milk in the glass was probably like a show of contentment, like more milk or something at night. Instead of taking the shot of whiskey, you drink some more milk and be content or something.
It was a good thing for sure. Wholesome. Okay, you want to click that for me?